monastery. I had only a few words to say to one of the monks. I wanted a tribune prepared for the family of the deceased, and he says my absence could not have been more than 10 or 12 minutes. When I came back into the church, I saw nothing of Ratisbon for a moment. Then I caught sight of him on his knees in front of the lateral altar of St. Michael the Archangel. I went up to him and touched him 3 or 4 times before he became aware of my presence. At length he turned toward me, his face bathed in tears. He joined his hands and said, with an expression which no words will render, "Oh, how this gentleman, Monsieur Lafournaise, has prayed for me." But what happened was that when he was looking at this image of St. Michael at the altar there, the image of St. Michael disappeared and Our Lady appeared as she is on the miraculous medal with the rays of light coming from her hands. And even Alphonse Ratisbon said, I couldn't look at her because the ray of light was so intense. He said, I couldn't look anywhere above her hands because it was an immense amount of light. But it so struck him. He said, I was quite petrified with astonishment. I felt what people feel in presence of a miracle. I raised Ratisbon. I led him, or rather almost carried him, out of the church. I asked him what was the matter and where he wished to go. Lead me where you please, cried he. After what I have seen, I obey. I urged him to explain this meeting, but he could not. His emotion was too mighty and profound. He drew forth from his bosom the miraculous medal and covered it with kisses and with tears. I brought him back to his apartment, and notwithstanding my repeated questions, I could get from him nothing but exclamations broken by deep sobs. Oh, what bliss is mine! How good is the Lord! What a fullness of grace and of happiness! How pitiable the lot of those who know not! Then he burst into tears at the thought of heretics and disbelievers. At length he asked me if I did not think him mad. But no, he exclaimed, I am in my right senses. My God, I am not beside myself. Everyone knows that I am not mad. This wild emotion became gradually calmer, and then Ratisbon threw his arms around me and embraced me. His face was radiant, I might almost say transfigured. He begged me to take him to a confessor, wanted to know when he might receive holy baptism, for now he could not live without it, yearned for the blessedness of the martyrs whose sufferings he had seen depicted on the walls of St. Stefano Rotondo. He told me that he could give me no explanation of his state until he had received permission from a priest to do so. For what I have to say, he added, is something I can only say on my knees. I took him immediately to the Jesu to see Father de Villefort, who begged him to explain himself. Then Ratisbon drew forth his medal, kissed it, and showed it to us, and exclaimed, I have seen her! I have seen her! And his emotion again choked his utterance. But soon he regained his calmness and made this statement. I give it in his own words. Quote, I had been but a few moments in the church when I was suddenly seized with an unutterable agitation of mind. I raised my eyes. The building had disappeared from before me. One single lateral altar had, so to speak, gathered and concentrated all the light. And in the midst of that radiance I saw standing on the altar loft, clothed with splendor, full of majesty and of sweetness, the Virgin Mary, just as she is represented on the medal. An irresistible force drew me towards her. The Virgin made me sign with her hand that I should kneel down, and then she seemed to say, that will do. She spoke not a word, but I understood all. Brief as this statement is, Ratisbon could not utter it without pausing frequently to take breath and to subdue the emotion with which he was feeling. We listened to him with a sacred awe, mingled with joy and with gratitude, marveling at the depth of the counsels of God and at the ineffable treasures of his mercy. One word struck us especially by its depth of mystery. She spoke not a word, but he understood all. Now, what he later on would claim is that in that instant that Our Lady appeared to him, she taught him all the faith. Our Lady catechized him. So that when he went to see the priest said, he said, when can I be baptized? He said, well, you have to take instructions first. He said, well, ask me any question, Father. Our Lady in that instant taught me, enlightened him about everything he needed to know. So the priest asked him questions, and he answered them all correctly. He never was catechized formally. But Our Lady enlightened him. That light that she gives, the light that comes from God, instructed him and moved him, that he said he realized he couldn't be in church until he was baptized, because he realized, not being in the state of grace, how unworthy he was and how he needed to be in the state of grace. So she impressed upon him all those things in that instant, where she didn't say anything, but she enlightened him. Now, this story of the conversion of Alphonse Ratisbonne, who later on became a priest like his brother, and he took as his name Mary, he was known as Father Mary. They both started an order of nuns called the Daughters of Zion, which were to work for the conversion of the Jewish people. And they have their houses in Jerusalem and in the Holy Land. They run hostels, places for pilgrims, at least when the order was still vibrant. I'm not sure what kind of state it is in now. And Father Mary, Alphonse Ratisbonne, is buried at Ein Corinne, the famous place of the visitation where Our Lady went to visit John the Baptist and Elizabeth. He's buried in the cemetery there. And you'll find his name, Father Mary Ratisbonne, there. But that story was read to a young seminarian in Rome at the Conventual Franciscans. His name was St. Maximilian Kolbe.
Goes around.
He heard this story and he realized how powerful Our Lady's grace is, and how powerful the medal in itself is not the power. The medal is only it disposes us for grace. And if you use it and do what Our Lady asks, she will give great graces. St. Maximilian so was impressed by the conversion of Alphonse Ratisbonne that he said, I have to give the medal to anybody and everybody who will take it. Because he said, it's Our Lady's bullet, because it makes enemies of God his friend. So that St. Maximilian Kolbe adopted that as part of his apostolate. Since it was the medal of the Immaculate Conception, he said that's Our Lady's mission. Our Lady's mission is already identified in her Immaculate Conception, which is what? To crush the head of Satan. Genesis 3:15. So in the life of Alphonse Ratisbonne, Our Lady did crush the head of Satan. She crushed this blindness and this darkness that he was living under, his hatred for the church. And so he would try to give the medal to anyone who would take it, because St. Maximilian Kolbe said, if the person will take the medal, even if they're not even disposed, Alphonse Ratisbonne was not taking the medal because he had any devotion, but he took the medal, so that even that little crack, Our Lady's like a camel. She gets her nose under the tent, and she's in there sooner or later. She just needs a beachhead of grace. If someone will just take the medal, they don't realize it, but they're inviting Our Lady into their life. And if they do that, you'll find sometimes people who are converts and say, well, what moved you to convert? I don't know. Someone gave me this medal. You'll run across people and they didn't know what they were getting when they got it. But so St. Maximilian Kolbe made that part of his evangelization efforts, was to give out the miraculous medal. And of course, Mother Teresa of Calcutta would, if you ever met Mother Teresa, when I saw her in Denver in I can't remember what it was, at McNichols Arena, she had all these big bodyguards. I don't know why they thought Mother Teresa needed these big bodyguards, but they had these big men, they're like big. They were walking around her, trying to protect her, and she was darting around these men, and she was handing these things to people as she was coming into the arena, and she was handing them miraculous medals. Now, how many miraculous medals do you think she probably handed out in her life? Because she was popular. And anyway, she said that I got this model or this example from St. Maximilian Kolbe. And so she was a good disciple. And I'm sure there are many souls that came into the church because of a miraculous medal that Mother Teresa gave them. But, Our Lady has done so many things to the miraculous medal, and it can be a big thing, like the conversion of Alphonse Ratisbonne, or maybe even something that is not even, might say in the ways of the spiritual world, not that important. It may be just somebody wanting to do something important in a worldly way. For example, when the famous Catholic flyer Charles Lindbergh was making his maiden flight across the Atlantic, when the Spirit of St. Louis, when he took off, before he took off, he wasn't getting in a jet and traveling across the Atlantic. It was a long trip, and that plane was not a fast plane either. But as he was flying, and maybe been after about 20 some hours, he was starting to fall asleep. And the plane was getting lower and lower and lower. And just about time it was about ready to crash into the ocean, he heard this clanking in the cockpit that woke him up. And so he woke up in time just to pull back to save the plane from going into the drink. And he would never have made that historic trip. What was the clanking in the cockpit? Was it someone gave him a miraculous medal before he took off? And the medal was clanking and woke him up. So
I was telling him something.
yeah. So
how widely is that known?
So that is, Our Lady will do whatever she wants. But I'd encourage you. We have some miraculous medals we'll have available for you to take with you and to wear it yourself. As Our Lady said, she promised great graces to those who wear it, particularly around the neck. And I think that it helped create renewed devotion to Our Lady, and I think it's one of the reasons that helped bring about a quicker proclamation of the dogma of the Immaculate Conception in 1854. And interesting enough that in 1854, when Pope Pius IX proclaimed the dogma, he handed the proclamation to a little bishop who was impressed with this little bishop's humility. He said, I want that little bishop over there to hold the proclamation while I read it. And that little bishop's name was St. John Neumann. St. John Neumann, the Bishop of Philadelphia. Yeah, he was the one who the Pope said, give it to him to hold, because he was impressed with this little bishop. And he's the one, because he was an American bishop, he's the one that held the proclamation. So.
For the Immaculate Conception,
yes,
1854.
in 1851.
A relic of his was the cross.
I'm doing it. Well, that's good. So St. John Neumann, of course, a great saint himself, and I'm sure he had great devotion. He went there for the special meeting of the bishops of the United States with all the other bishops of the world to see or to attend the conference. And as I say, the Immaculate Conception is a great grace for the whole church, and it's a dogma. It means that it's something that you must believe and hold fast if you're really Catholic. And when Our Lady appeared at Fatima, she said the dogma of the faith will always remain in Portugal. She didn't say the dogma, she said the dogma. What is the dogma of the faith? Well, it's the Immaculate Conception, because even Pope John Paul II in one of his writings says that the Immaculate Conception is the synthesis of all of Catholic doctrine. Because you can go from the Immaculate Conception to the redemption to the creation of the world, and it is really a summation of everything that you need to know. So that if you maintain the true understanding, a proper understanding of the Immaculate Conception, I think in many ways you will always remain steadfast in the faith. And so the Immaculate Conception, I'm sure that Our Lady has always kept her promise to grant great graces to those who have confidence. So you have to have confidence. You must ask her. St. Maximilian Kolbe, as I said earlier, he said, since Our Lady said, these are the graces that I want to give to people, but they do not ask. He said, he always made it his intention, whenever he prayed, to ask Our Lady for the graces she wanted to give him. Because he said, she knows better than I what I need. So he'd say, well, I want this, but if that's not what is needed for me, then Mother Mary, you know what I need, give it to me. If I need a whack between the eyes, that's the grace I need, then she'll do that. That's what our novice master said. That Our Lady put lead in her gloves and knocked Alphonse Ratisbon out. Because he needed a knockout punch. He was quite stubborn in his lack of faith. So who knows how many Ratisbons have come since then and have been converted, but we need to make sure that we give those medals to whoever. If you have someone who's away or seems to be in need of conversion, that may be the thing that, the medal's very unpretentious. People like jewelry. So the medal looks like jewelry. So, and it's kind of pretty. It's shiny, and they think, oh, I'll take that. If you were to offer them a scapular, that's too Catholic. That's very Catholic looking. They won't go near it. But if you offer a miraculous medal, they'll say, oh, yeah, I'll take that. And so I would encourage you to take that up as a thing. But we mentioned about this letter to the Ephesians, about that it says there that he predestined us to be his adopted sons through Jesus Christ. So that was God's plan from the very beginning, that we would all become adopted children in this family of Jesus and Mary. And so the Immaculate Conception is a very important, it's his mother. Our Lord loves his mother, and he gave her that grace, and we're going to find out even more so about that as we go on and talk about the apparition at Lourdes, because these two apparitions kind of like bookends. The one before the Immaculate Conception, 1830, and the one after the Immaculate Conception. They both have some very important things to remind us of, and they had an influence in St. Maximilian Kolbe, both of these apparitions. So they're important, I think, to know their significance. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession, was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my Mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So any quick question, because we have probably ran right out. What do I have here? The next conference is at 11:45, and it's already 11:39. Anyway, any questions, or we can take a break, whoever.
I'm giving everybody a chance to ask first.
But she's staring at you, which means she has a question.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
You were talking about approved apparitions last night, and I wonder if you can recommend a source for people to look up which ones have been approved, which are still sort of pending, and which maybe
Good
have
question.
not been approved. As an authoritative source that people can trust.
You might just write in Google approved apparitions, because I think there's some place where they show you all the ones that are approved. The most modern since Rue de Bac, Rue de Bac, and there's all those four that they're in the book there. Then of course there's Belgium. There was an apparition there that was approved. Amsterdam was approved by the local bishop, so Our Lady of All Nations is an approved apparition. Because all the church says is that the local ordinary has to give his approval, and the Bishop of Pont in Amsterdam approved it in 1991. So, and he's never revoked his approval from it. The church made them change the prayer of Our Lady of All Nations, so it doesn't, because they were a little bit confused by it, but there was no confusion. It wasn't saying that Our Lady didn't. It just says, the woman who once was known as Mary. It doesn't mean that she's not known as Mary anymore. We're just saying that we're not accentuating her personal name, but her title that she has as Our Lady of All Nations. She's the mother of all people. And so she's not just Mary, the mother of Jesus, she's the mother of all people. So it wasn't sliding. So the church just said, don't put that who once was Mary, because it confuses too many people, and I suppose like some priests are tired of answering questions. I don't know. So, and then of course, Fatima is, in this last century. And Akita in 1973 was approved by the local bishop, and it's a very powerful message there of Our Lady too. And it's one of those that's kind of It's kind of scary what Our Lady said in Akita. The statue was weeping 101 times, and the statue was bleeding. And Sister Agnes's hand was bleeding. She had like the stigmata in one hand, shaped like a cross. So it's interesting itself, the messages of Akita. So Medjugorje is still on the examination table, you might say. I don't know.
That's what I was gonna ask about.
But and I don't know of any modern apparitions since then that have been approved. There's a rather disconcerting, the bishop in the Philippines approved Lipa in the Philippines, and then the Vatican came out and kind of slammed it. And yet there's a lot of questions about that because it seems there was a lot of politics going on. And so I myself think Lipa, or Our Lady, appeared to this girl that was a novice with the Carmelite order there, and identified herself as the mediatrix of all graces. That I think that's still, it still may be. The story's not done with that one yet. That's all I can say. Garabandal, the children even said that it would be approved, and then it would fall out. Someone would come along and say it's not approved, but then it would be, in the end, be approved. Now, the only problem with Garabandal is that Joy Lamangino said that he was going to be there to witness this miracle. That he was going to be cured of his blindness as part of the sign. But Joy Lamangino is dead, so that would be quite a miracle if he was, if he came back from the tomb. So I don't know. But the young ladies that were there, they seem to be very edifying, and Conchita and all those young ladies that were receiving of those. So I don't know. It's still kind of out there as a mystery right now.
Can we speak a little bit about co-redemptress? I was in a class a couple of months ago, and the priest said that was not to be used, that
Well, he doesn't know what he's talking
Pope
about.
Benedict went to
We've heard
John
that.
Paul and said that's heresy.
No,
That
that's
use
not.
of
The
blah, blah,
Pope did not say. He did not say, because Pope John Paul II used the word co-redemptrix 6
Right.
times when he was Pope. So the priest doesn't
blah.
know
And
it.
said-
He doesn't have his information correct. First of all, Cardinal Ratzinger was only speaking as his personal opinion. It wasn't
Right.
like the official. He said, "Oh, I think that this term co-redemptrix, it might be problematic," but that doesn't mean that it's condemned, and no one has ever condemned the term co-redemptrix or co-redemption as being not Catholic. They just say, "Oh, it'll cause Protestants some problems because they don't understand it, and they'll think that we're making Our Lady like another member of the Trinity or something."
But that was
That,
never
but
taken
it,
off the,
no, I've never. In matter of fact, even Vatican said at Vatican II, when it mentioned in Lumen Gentium, it mentioned a few of Our Lady's titles: mediatrix, advocate, dispensatrix. It said we were not limiting these to these titles. We didn't do away with other titles. We only mentioned a few of them in the document, but that wasn't the only ones you could use. So the person doesn't know what they're talking about. Because I had the same argument with somebody who was working for Catholic Answers. I said, why don't I hear you talk about the co-redemptrix in on your Catholic Answers program? Oh, well, we talk about the teaching, but we can't mention the word co-redemptrix because Pope Benedict, when he was Cardinal Ratzinger, he said it was not to be used. I said, that's a personal opinion. He wasn't speaking on the matter as a and he just said it had some problematic because of it might cause confusion, but he wasn't saying it wasn't Catholic.
Right.
I said,
You said that?
yeah, he said that when he was Cardinal Ratzinger. He said that
Yes,
the
he
term
said
co-redemptrix is
could-
problematic. It might cause problems for ecumenism.
Oh, yeah.
The German bishops have had this ecumenical hang up since Martin Luther, I guess, because they don't want to do something that's going to make the Lutherans unhappy. But now they're going in Germany right now. I don't know if there is a very big Catholic church, and I think they're all becoming Lutheran over there. But
See what
anyway,
happens.
so you can use the term, and it's the best term to use to describe the mystery that we're talking about. Mother Redeemer is only part of it. It doesn't say all that needs to be said. So, matter of fact, Father Peter, who's been with this whole thing, says that you first, when this was talked about, they referred to our Lord as the Redemptor and Our Lady as the Redemptrix. And they said, well, that sounds like we're making her equal to Christ, so let's put co in front of it to show that she's subordinate to him. Now they're saying, oh, the argument today is, oh, you're calling her co-redemption. That's like you're making her co-equal. No, that's not.